Hello everyone, welcome back to On the Fly. Today we're taking a look at what happened to the Boston Bruins over this past offseason. Obviously a team who made a historic run throughout this previous season, putting up 135 points, 12 regulation losses, and now to a team that's borderline contending for a Stanley Cup playoff bid. We'll sort of break it down here to see what actually happened to this team. But with that being said, wow. When you look at the Bruins, what happened, right? You look at a team who's put up impressive numbers throughout. They have a few players still. Their defense core is partially still intact. But then their forward group is completely new. Their goaltending still the same. But their forward group has been basically replaced. And we'll sort of break that down here in a little bit, where and basically why everyone left. But it's really interesting to see what happened to the Boston Bruins and sort of where we see them right now. What their biggest problem is obviously their centers, and we've seen that throughout with Bergeron, Krejci leaving, Nosek is now gone, basically Foligno too. All the players that basically lined up the middle are now gone. Coyle is still around. Zacha is still around. He's probably going to be the top line role. I've sort of made up a mock draft of who I expect to play in what role, with Marchand, Zacha, and Pastrnak on the top line. But really it could be anyone playing on these lines now. The Bruins have lost Taylor Hall. He was the other guy that sort of fill in throughout that left-right side depending on how Boston wanted to play it. But it's really interesting to see, because obviously they traded Hall to get room for Bertuzzi. But as we look on this list, nope, no Bertuzzi, which means Bruins have lost out on that one too. They've really lost out on everything that they've done. No Nosek anymore, Bergeron, Krejci, Bertuzzi, Orlov, and we'll get to that in a second here. But it's really interesting to see Foligno too, that really they've lost all of their team through free agency, through this offseason, through trade, and really haven't picked up any replacements for them yet. I'd be curious to see if Bergeron and Krejci come back. There's no official news on that, but it is starting to appear that it's looking like they won't return. And if they don't, that's just handcuffing Boston even more, right? You look at this team right now, what their biggest problem is, they got no centers at all. And sure, Coyle is okay, Zacha is okay, but really Zacha's a winger. Coyle is an overpayment. He's a third-line center. Maybe you can argue for a second-line center at best. And really, when you look at this team, it's just a team that doesn't really fit right now. We'll see once they get on the ice if they can figure it out. They are a veteran team. You look at that, they do have quite a bit of veterans that they've brought in. JVR, Shattenkirk, really players that have been there, have done that, and probably is going to help them in the long run. But we'll see nonetheless what goes on here, whether or not they can do it. Right now, they got about $5.5 million in cap, worth. Basically, my expectation is about 3 of that will go to the RFA arbitration players. Frederick, I think, will be at a 1-1 deal, $1 million by 1 year. Swayman, probably $2 million by maybe 1 or 2 years, depending on what they want to do there. But I think sort of that's where they're headed. Both players are in arbitration right now, so by the time that this video probably gets posted, those numbers will be announced. But we'll see nonetheless where that lands. If I had to guess, probably $3 million for the two of them. So you're looking about $2.5 million to spend to get that top line player that you're looking for. Obviously, you'll probably trade some guys too to get that role. But it's really curious to see. Obviously, Boston doesn't have a ton of draft picks. They traded them all this past year to make a deep playoff push, all to get knocked out by the Florida Panthers in 7 games after going up 3-1. But that's not the point we're going to focus on here. Just with this team right now, they are not looking too good. I think they're still a contending team at the end of the day, but it is a different looking team. Their defense core is still intact for the most part. Their goaltenders still intact. They're basically carried their team to the playoffs last year. And then their forward group is, for the most part, pretty new. You got DeBrusk too, who's also in there, but really when you look at this team, a lot of new pieces, especially in that bottom 6. So we'll be curious to see sort of what happens if they can figure it out. Obviously some returning faces too with Lucic, and you're sort of looking at that more tougher game, which I think Boston's going to have to play in order to contend with some of these top-end teams who have all the skill. You look at even in their own division, you got Toronto in there. Ottawa is starting to come up as an underdog team. Tampa Florida for that matter too, who's come out of nowhere. All these teams have a lot of skill, and Detroit is a team that's also flying under the radar. They're a team to watch this year too. I said the same thing about Ottawa last year, didn't quite pan out, but this year Detroit, definitely a team to watch. So it's curious to see sort of what Boston does here to make their sort of final move. If it is Bergeron, if they try and do a really hard push on Bergeron, if it's Krejci, or if it's someone else from another team through trade. Scheifele is one I've been very much looking at, because obviously Winnipeg's looking just to blow it all up. That might be a good fit in Boston, but we'll see. Nonetheless, with that being said, we'll take a look here. If you want to see sort of any of the cap, go ahead, pause the video right now. But we're going to flip over here to the what happened to the Boston Bruins. And this is an interesting one, because what we've seen here is who's in, who's out. So players that are coming in, you got Van Riemsdyk, Geekie, Brown probably plays. Richard, who knows, might be sort of that 13th, 14th, 15th forward. Witherspoon I don't see playing. Lucic is a player who I do see playing quite a bit. Probably that fourth line role. Grinder type player, he's going to get rough with you. That's who you're probably seeing there. Magna probably fills in bottom six. And then Shattenkirk also is a player who I very much see is going to play quite a bit for the Bruins, logging a lot of minutes, probably that sort of third line defenseman role. So we'll see sort of what goes on there. And then lastly with Regula and Mitchell through the trade. Still hurts, not going to lie to you, but with that being said, with the out players, and this is where it starts to become a problem for the Bruins, right? You look at what they've done. They've brought in some players, sure, but does Van Riemsdyk match up with Bergeron, Krejci, Orlov, Bertuzzi? Riley didn't play too much, but still a player that they relied upon. Clifton they lost. Ashawn, not really too big. Hathaway, bottom six guy. Nosek, bottom six guy, but a really good bottom six guy, Nosek. And then you lost Foligno and Taylor Hall. And then, like at that point, that's for the most part a lot. That's basically your forward group from last year, minus your top guys and Marchand, Pasternak. Coyle you could throw in there, Zaka you could throw in there, DeBrusk you could throw in there, but really you're losing basically the extent of your forward group. Your defense, I mean, I would have liked to seen Orlov stay, but it's not the end of the world. Clifton is a tough loss. He was a player that really fit in Boston. He'd have his games, he'd have his off games, but he has, for the most part, his good games outweighed his bad games. So with that being said, a pretty unfortunate offseason for the Bruins. I'll sort of give you my live reaction, the live reaction video. Link can be found in the description below for the trade with the Foligno Hall both getting out, but I'll let you see that there right now. Oh, here we go. What? Oh my God. Why? So anyway, yeah, that was my reaction to the Taylor Hall trade. If you want to see the full video, you can see me go from expecting the first overall pick to getting this return right here with Ian Mitchell and Alec Regula. It was an interesting video, I have to say. I was definitely devastated to see it. But with that being said, I highly do recommend you check it out. Link can be found in the description below. But now back to sort of the topic at hand. Boston's lost everything in this deal. So it's curious to see if they make any moves. Obviously, Bergeron and Krejci aren't gone yet. They haven't been officially announced to be gone. So you can't really put them over there, but in my opinion, at least what I think is going to happen, Bergeron is a maybe. Krejci, I think, is gone. I don't see him coming back for more. Maybe they do. If they do, I think Boston's definitely has a shot this year to win the Cup. If they don't, I find it really hard to see them making. They'll probably make the playoffs, but a first round exit's probably likely for them. But we'll see. Nonetheless, what goes on with the Bruins. Obviously, they are GM'd by one of the greatest GMs in NHL history, Don Sweeney. But with that being said, if you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. If you'd like to drop a like, if you really like to consider subscribing, tell all your friends down in the comments your thoughts on the Boston Bruins. Until next time, see you.